Hello, everyone. Hello, Dr. Laitman, and to all of our writers and viewers. And we are on our writers' meeting, and today we're going to talk about things that bother humanity in general. And the hot topic now is going back to routine. Here in Israel, the Passover is over, the people of Israel came out of Egypt, now they're coming out of the coronavirus, and starting today, that we're sitting here, there are many more people that can go out, go back to work. We're talking about children that are going back to school, but all in all, the public is going back to more or less to a normal life. Have we defeated the coronavirus? Are we on our way to defeat it? I don't think that we have defeated the coronavirus. I think that in the meantime, the corona is defeating us, and we're bending. And if we jump before the corona allows us to advance somehow, then we will really be harmed. Therefore, to me it seems that there's no benefit or success in this war against the corona. We still don't exactly understand what is it, what exactly is this virus, how does it work, how does it pass from one person to another. We only see something, the external things that this is to our benefit, this to our detriment, more or less something like that. But we have a problem that we, as human beings, we are obliged to provide ourselves with different necessary needs. So we have to go out to work, we have to produce different things, we have to trade. So we have a problem that we can't simply sit at home, even though that sitting at home and completely disconnecting from one another would have been the safest thing. But also all the managers and so on, the government, all around the world, can't stand this. We won't be able to serve ourselves, therefore, because there's no other choice. They investigate and allow people to some extent to go out to work and trade and this and that, but really, we're not ready for it. We don't have the ability to resist the expansion of the virus, and I think that in the upcoming weeks, we will see negative results from this, even though that we have no choice. On the other hand, I understand them, on the one hand. On the other hand, how much will they tell us about these phenomena? That's a question, because like always, they lie about the number of casualties, ill, this, that. Maybe it'll be the same in this case. But really? It's called to be bold on both sides, meaning we can't allow ourselves to stay at home, but on the other hand, we can't go out and, act wildly like before. So we're choosing kind of the least of two evils. I think that we should have sat at home with this virus until we really understand what to do about it, biologically, socially. And I'm emphasizing socially that this is what the wisdom of Kabbalah, the answer that the wisdom of Kabbalah gives us of what do we have to do. And then we would have to sit at home from 6 to 18 months. Also, I said that the first wave, until we will start understanding the situation, it's about half a year. I said this already in advance. Unfortunately, it's really so. So that we're going out now. Well, we'll go out because we have no choice. Because now it's exactly, picking all the fruits, and what can you do? We have to. The question that every government in the world is dealing with now is how to correctly combine between health and economy. How do you protect the citizens and the country? Is there a solution? This is actually what the government wants to consider and decide, and I see that there are plenty of opposing opinions there, and they can't reach some equilibrium and decide unanimously, calmly, that we have to do things one way or another and we have no choice. But still, everyone has proof of their own, opinions of their own. I don't know. I'm saying just what to do just in relation to one thing. We have to understand why does it come. It is only like the rest of the forces of nature in order to push us to receive a unanimous form where we have to be as one man and one heart eventually, and to advance to a state where we will be as one system of Adam Rishon, one soul, to rise above our ego in order to connect. And then, by that, we defeat the coronavirus. Even if we'll understand the forces of nature deeply, the way you explain, it seems that the public itself are also fed up with sitting at home, and they also want to go out and work. How long can you sit at home? It's not good, because really, during this time, during which the public is sitting at home, we have to use this time and educate the public, correct it, to bring it to connection, fill it with different plans, special plans, as to what will they do, how will they work, through which they will know what do they exist for, why, how to reach these things, how to do it, why do all of these viruses disappear as a result of our connection, and so on. We should have done this, but we have no approach to this. There's no one to hear, to listen, not in the government, not in politics, no one. And therefore it's a problem. And probably also the public has not suffered enough in order to hear these things. The casualty rate in Israel is of the lowest in the world. Why? Is it providence, or are we really good citizens? First of all, relatively to the general population, we're not that good. That relatively to the number of people in the country, I don't know if it's that much. I haven't made a comparison. Per 1,000 people, how many casualties, and in relation to what age, and so on. This one thing. Another thing is that we have to understand that the coronavirus doesn't come in order to clean our planet from people, but in order to direct people toward correction. And therefore, to shake up societies, humanity, people, nations, for them to know, to maybe hear a bit about what does their correction, their good life depend on. Therefore, we don't have to take into account the number of people that die. I also don't know what does it mean that in Japan 1,000 people die and in Israel 1,000 people die. In Japan 1,000 people die per what? That it's like 1% of 1,000, and for us it's 1%. So all of these things, they have to be calculated differently. So I don't look at these things at all. I'm not thinking in the direction of how many die, how many don't, when do we open shops, when don't we. It's also incorrect and in the wrong direction. I'm only looking at whether people are becoming more sensitive to hearing the truth. In the meantime, there is some kind of movement toward that, but still it's very far. As if there is an inclination toward opening the ears, but it didn't reach the ears yet. And how is it possible to allow people to hear more? I think that time will do its work too, because we'll see in the next month that nothing helps, that we'll have to sit at home, that we don't really have a remedy, a tested remedy, that there's nothing that we can do besides staying away from each other. And in that, the virus wants to show us where our place really is. Not to come into contact with one another, not to touch each other both physically, and also gradually we see that with this way we are growing further apart from one another. We will see how much the TV shows will change, and in general everywhere. People will become a bit more isolated from one another, not only in terms of distance, but also internally. And it's good. It will give them more space between them to think, what do they have to fill it with if they want to be connected? Norma, please. First of all, there are several examples of relief in the quarantine, Sweden, Singapore, other places, and the results are not good. There is an increase and people are getting ill. What would you recommend to the people of Israel? I would recommend to the people of Israel to open only essential businesses that you need in order to live. Suppose working in the fields, farming, have plenty of vegetables, fruits, things that, suppose that now we need to pick them. We have to harvest them. This has to be. But we can also do this kind of work in a way that we're far from one another, that we don't come closer to each other. What else? We have to make sure we have to deal with the army, that we have no choice, that today's soldiers, it's not like they used to be, that they're all tightly together, but we have to think how to isolate soldiers from each other and also from populations that might pass on to them viruses. I don't know, there has to be a very serious, deep approach from a high level of correction. That the correction, it depends only on bring people's hearts closer, and then this distance will not stand in our way. We also have to take care of our children, because in the meantime it seems to us that children aren't harmed by the virus. But soon this will not be the case. Soon this will not be the case. The age of, this is how I feel it, that the age that the ages that the virus affects, it will decrease to younger and younger ages. Okay, this kind of pressuring. Look, the process is a dynamic process. And it's evolving. And if in parallel we're not doing what nature demands us to, then of course this is how it's going to be. Now, in the meantime, we think that children only pass this virus. They themselves, they're not ill with it, but they only go through very late changes and they pass it on from adult to adult. But this is only in the meantime. Okay, so like you're saying, we have to decide what are the necessary steps. You're saying agriculture and army, these are necessary things. Now, we heard you say that, look, in the future, we won't need any businesses besides the things that are necessary for our sheer existence. To fulfill our basic needs, it will clean everything. People that do not read the map correctly now, if they don't feel it, then here too, they will have to get more and more blows until, they'll hear and start hearing. Then they'll start thinking. Whereas the wisdom of Kabbalah says, all in all the blows, they come from nature. And nature in Gematria equals Elokim, meaning the upper force. And it is only in order for us to connect with each other and bring humanity to a global and integral humanity. So in relation to the future society that's being built, what are the necessary, essential systems, services that the country needs? Army, agriculture. Here in Israel, the army and, of course, agriculture, and, the food industry, and in general. But we're talking about the essential food industry. And all the rest, there is no real need for it. It's not essential. We can't open coffee shops, theaters, different things where people just connect, because we see that this virus is against the connection between people. Because our connection is egoistic. It actually wants to push us away from each other and to show us that we can only connect in a special way and only for the sake of crucial, essential things. And suppose we work in the field, in construction, in different things that are crucial, that we need to do, that there we won't feel that coming closer to each other leads to the outbreak of the coronavirus. Because these are necessary things and people there work in order to provide the citizens with what they need. But in different businesses that are not for the sake of what we call basic needs, but that they are surplus, there we will immediately see the outbreak of the coronavirus. Okay, why don't you see culture as something necessary for society? Our culture. There's nothing worse. There's nothing worse, more egoistic, that teaches us such things, corrupts our children, that you call that culture. It's an obscene word. Okay, and if it were in a different form, it would become essential. Then from culture, it becomes education and culture. This is truly an exalted word then. Culture, it means to elevate the spirit of man up to the godly level. Okay, what culture is essential for us today? Today, I have nothing to say. We have to do, as Bala Sulam says, we have to revise, re-examine everything, and determine what do we have to do. Were we really to correctly relate to the coronavirus, we would turn the entire country, the entire society, the entire world. We'd flip them from their toes to their head. Another question. We see that the Jewish people went through many ups and downs in their history. Suffering, pain, this, that. Tomorrow is the Holocaust Memorial Day, and they didn't learn from this. Exactly. And you're saying a small virus, people will learn from that. No one opens their ears. We want to learn now what to do, how to correctly learn. I see that this is our problem as a nation. You have children, suppose. These are your children. What are you going to do with them? Tell me what. At home, I put everyone in a different room and I yell all day long. This is exactly what the virus wants to do with us. Put everyone in their own room. Fine. What do you do next? Let's learn from you. Go back to my corner. During the meal, I sit with them and try to explain to them what's good, what's not. So good, begin with that. Excellent. You're saying correct things. Do the same with the nation. Do the same with the world.
שאלה לאותו כיוון, איך ישפיע לכוח העבודה?
How will this influence manpower coming out of the quarantine, even gradually, into a completely new world, even if it's to the same workplace? How can a person use these new discernments in a good way? When we will already go out to work, then we will see that we are new people. We don't see that how we're changing already. It's not the same world. It's not the same nation. This virus is psychologically changing us. Essentially, I'd even say to some extent that it's spiritually changing us. We can't go back to all of these tiny businesses. Even if we think, we'll do it forcefully and we'll get used to it and we'll go back to how things were, won't happen. Won't. We will have to get rid of 80%, suppose, of the imaginary engagements of our imaginary engagements. out of no choice, we'll have to build a new social structure. Because how could it be that 20% work and different kinds of work that are necessary for the country, for the world, for the nation, for society, and 80%, they're doing nothing? What are we going to do? How will we disseminate this work, distribute it between everyone? Or we'll do something else, I don't know. But for sure, when we will reach a state that as if we can do whatever we feel like, we will not be able to go back to the same aviation, trade, banks, egoistic dealing with all of our businesses, international trade, none of these. None. It will be a completely different world. As if we're castrated or something. That we're powerless, that we have no ability to compete, to be in this kind of competition between countries and societies, and it'll be something completely different. The coronavirus will force us to build things anew. And I see that here and there people are already starting to write about this. At least there are such articles where people write that we're no longer going back to the same relations, same industry, same running around that we had before. And it's not that, the Dow Jones rings every evening when the stock markets close. That's over. The attitude toward all of these things will be different. And therefore, I don't want in today's talk to relate to us going back to how things were. Going back 5-10%, doesn't matter. We're not going back to how things work. How things were. It won't work. I'm sure that if we go a bit back, we'll get a blow. Go a bit more back, get a blow, and go back to how we were. And there will be big problems in governments, in I don't know what, but problems on the street. People will take to the streets. The government that the governments are going into big problems. On the one hand, you have to feed everyone, clothe everyone, arrange education for children, arrange medicine for everyone, medical care on the one hand. On the other hand, for this you need money. Where do you find the money? Meaning there's a problem here, that these problems demand of us to re-examine our attitude toward the nation, the country, the type of connection between us. It has to receive a more socialistic form. Socialistic, meaning that society, as if the kibbutz, will be the main force that will determine the form of the country. And here it's not that bad yet, because the Israeli nation is, there's somehow, we're close to each other by spirit, this, that, but in the rest of the countries, there are going to be very big problems. The people of Israel, because they were under pressure and, they went through all these calamities throughout history, they can come together, feel that we have no choice, we have to, we need to. Nature is demanding this of us, the nations of the world. But there are such nations, in Europe at least, and other places. What connection can be there? We will have to pass the method of correction onto them. When you're talking about a socialistic society, what do you mean, like Finland? Or no. By socialistic, I mean from the word socium. I'm not thinking about socialism like Marx, Herzl, or Kropotkin explained. You know him? No. These are strong ideologists of humanity, of how it can live in cooperation as a collective, because otherwise the forces of nature eventually do not allow us to advance. You see, we've allowed the capitalistic form to advance, we've destroyed our planet, now we feel its response. And this is only the first soft response that's beginning. Therefore, by socialism, I mean that this is the socium, as Bala Sulam writes, that one way or another, against our own will, we have to take care of society and to advance this way. Now you're sitting in the government. What do you think? There's supposed 20-30 billionaires in Israel, and you're thinking of how to allow them to profit, or you're thinking about the 10 million people that you have to at least give them some kind of livelihood, education for their children, clothe them, medical care. What is the government thinking about besides filling their own pockets? But they have to think about people. So they have no choice. So this is the problem. That by now having to decrease all the industry down to 20%, textile industry, all these things that you don't need, you have no buyers. You are now in a process where you have a crisis in society that doesn't want to buy, suppose 50% or even 80% of what it used to buy. They don't want to buy it anymore. Imagine that all these 80%, it's like gift shops. There's nothing that a person needs. You understand, right? So this is how today everyone's looking at society. That 80% are needless. By it, we only destroyed nature and so on. And, shops are simply standing and no one's buying anything. No one will go in. You'll see how things are going to be. That please, everything's open, go ahead. Nothing. People don't need it all. Fashion is gone. Aviation, nothing. Even entertainment, very specific things, not like it used to be, that everyone becomes a clown and makes money off it. follow all of these changes that are now about to happen, and you'll see that nature will do it this way. Another thing is trust, lack of trust. That Trump says, suppose that China did it, and China says that they did it, and there are many accusations, and no one believes their governments. Everyone's blaming each other. How can we bring trust between people under the current conditions? I don't think that these things will end well. On the one hand, on the other hand, we are already in a state where there will be no place for the left, like in all of those revolutions where they could do something. The left corrupted itself with different movements of prostitution and anti-this and anti-that, and gay parades and different things that no one can trust them, can establish themselves on the left. And in this life in which, and this life that where there is such danger, I'm sure that in our times it's going to be the radical right. That's not good either. But I think that eventually, from all of these struggles, mess, everyone will be perplexed. Everyone will be perplexed. And of course, the left will yell, the right will yell, I know what to do, I know what to do. But all this mockery will not be appreciated by society in any way. We will nonetheless have to go out and to seriously explain that we are talking on part of the global nature, that here we have no choice, that we have to adjust ourselves to nature like any other living species, and only this way can we be saved. And we're not turning on part of the religious, of the secular, of the right, of the left, of nothing, but only on part of nature, that this is the system that we exist in, and we can't disrespect it. And if we write this in a good and nice way, clearly, then there you have both ecology and society and everything. Because all in all, you're closing these things together. I still don't feel that you're in the right direction in terms of your writing. Can you specify? I'm explaining all the time that you have to start writing from the point of being in an integral nature and turning out of that. Not you. You have no opinion of your own, but only on part of nature. You're researching nature and you're explaining to everyone, what does nature demand of us? Don't say Elohim, that in Gematria is Teva, nature, that God is nature, no. But say nature, and everyone will understand that this is serious, and you bring different ideologies that no one cares about. Okay, I understand. We have 15 minutes left, so one more thing that I'd like to ask about virtual education. This morning, My friends are sitting, watching Zoom, studying through Zoom. Schools are trying to go back to how things were, only virtually. Instead of sitting together in a classroom, they meet on Zoom. Is this the correct approach? How do you see this? The next step in education. Yes, this is a correct approach. There's no point in people meeting physically. What do they have as a result? Virtually, it's much better. They start developing systems, different systems, systems of education, and there's a different inclination between people that want to feel the internality of people and not that. And what do I have as a result of being physically close to each other? I understand that, there are different games that we can play together. Tennis, ping pong, this we can do together, but not that you have to study together in a classroom in the way that we have built such. We're growing criminals. We're raising criminals. All the time have a battle of forces there. Queen of the class, king of the class, who needs that? Who's happy to go to school for these kinds of things? How much we have to pay teachers and everything in order for our children to get a better education, less corrupted, and in all parameters. It's a place of prostitution, of criminals. What you hear today that goes on in schools, it's like, it's normal or something. And therefore, I feel no sorrow that we'll have to close all schools this way, but it is possible that in relation to certain professions, we do have to have laboratories, for some professions, for some subjects, okay. Or we have to learn about connection, that people come and they're taught how to connect. This, yes, but to just study together the different subjects in school, looking at who's going to sleep with whom. If I understand correctly, the question was more about that the educational system is trying to continue the entire corruption that you have just described, but now to copy it into Zoom. And we really see that it doesn't work. There's even things like teachers trying to have students sitting with a uniform, on Zoom with a uniform. And is it correct to copy this kind of system onto Zoom, onto home education? Or what's the right way to do it? Like it is forbidden for us to continue the old world the way it was before the corona, with the industry and everything. Then, in the educational system too, it's forbidden for us to continue with the educational system the way that it was. What we're copying, everything that the way it was, with all the problems, and what will you get as a result? Parents will make every group will create an educational system for themselves and won't care about anything else. The problem is that the country gives a diploma, right? And this is its power. That I give you a diploma that you finished school. You don't have that, you're going to go to the university or something else. That's what they're playing with. It's done forcefully. It's not educational. It's not legit. And if I want to study on my own, please test me. I'll pass. I go into the university. If not, I don't. I, as a parent, don't want for my child to go to some other kind of education. We know how much time and efforts it takes to somehow put our children into an educational system, if you can call it educational at all. It's not education, but at least somewhat. That there you won't have blows, you won't have problems that much, there won't be prostitution, drugs, and so on. So here we have to try and explain to parents what has to be done. That there is the ability, opportunity to teach people, children differently, so let's do it. The Russians, they did this. How is it called, Simeon? Yeah, it was called Mofet. I don't know what's going on there now, but it was really good. Many Israelis study there too. Yeah, obviously that today it's already, but I remember the struggle that they had in the 90s, that they weren't allowed to do it, and they disagreed with what the country gives. That it was a serious war over it. But right now, when the children are at home, what do they have to receive from the country in terms of education? The country has to give children an educational plan so that each and every child, like in the university, you take several courses, several lessons in different professions, in different subjects, in order to all in all get a number of lessons and then to be tested on it. And that you choose one course or another, physical mathematical direction, or chemistry biology, or history geography, or things like that. Besides everyone having some basic package that every student has to take, but besides that, to thoroughly learn what does it mean a society that is suited to the general force of nature, to the integrality of nature. If this is what you teach a person, you open up his eyes. He knows what form does humanity have to have. This is what has to be done. This is the main profession, to build a human being. How do you give a child a warmth, emotional connection through the computer besides knowledge about the integral world? I don't know, I see they watch movies, they cry, they laugh, they're impressed more than they are by living people. What's the problem then? A person is impressed by the screen. What I see through my eyes, it's not through a screen. Yeah, Rav, but I see my children. They are really missing their friends. These connections fill them differently. But along with it, how much they hate lessons and so on. Let them meet. Let them meet. Those that want to meet, there are places where people play, there are different circles, this, that. Of course. What am I saying to isolate them like in prison or something? God forbid, not at all. Only I'm in favor of this global and integral education on the internet, for it to help us to arrange all of humanity in a way that everyone will understand the way.
אז עכשיו אני רואה פה גם הרבה שאלות בדף הפייסבוק שלנו.
There are also many questions. There are many viewers watching us now, and if there are any other questions about education and also about studying at home, Shelley, please. Yeah, Rav, recently there is a sharp surge in domestic violence toward women, toward children, and not everything is that only after the wave of Corona will end, we will really know how much violence was there at home, that people simply can't take the pressure. How do you advise us to deal with this? You're asking me for some kind of solutions that, sudden solutions and for everything. The wisdom of Kabbalah isn't talking about this. It's talking only about education, about how to bring a person to a state where he will be taught how to live a social life. So what can I tell you what to do? It's necessary to arrange everything. It's necessary to bring everyone to the correct societies, show them theater, movies, things that they will learn from. Man is a social creature that has to be taught how to behave, what to do, everything in life. You don't have to teach an animal how to behave. It has instincts. Man has no instincts. An animal knows this is allowed, this is not, this you can eat, this you can't. Man, a child, doesn't know. I remember when we studied psychology, for example, in the university, in the first year. So he used to explain to us, the professor that we've studied with, he used to say that man is a creature that knows nothing. You have to teach him everything. You have to put a child and tell him, this is how you go to the restroom. Otherwise, he doesn't know. It's a very smart example that even the most natural thing a person doesn't know how to do. Doesn't know. But you have to explain to him how to do it so it'll be convenient for him, for others, for this, for that. This is something very deep. Everything is education. There is nothing that is outside of education, outside the boundaries of education. Does the government maybe have to take this time in order to build some kind of educational plan to teach through the big channel? You know what period of time? Until it'll have the brains. You're right. But until it'll have the brains and it will be able to build something. Otherwise, everything will be a corruption over a corruption. There is another angle to this. We're asking what professions will there be in the universities? Subjects, will they exist? We have to learn what the last generation is, the future society, and accordingly we can understand what they have to know. Norma, please. Where there are women leaders, as president or so on, like in Germany and New Zealand, Taiwan, Iceland, and so on, there's much better success in dealing with the coronavirus. And the percentage is very low of women leaders. Why, if it's so relevant? And are women more suited to manage the world, govern the world? If the world will receive the form of a family, then of course there's room for women, and it will be much more successful if a woman controls the world like a family. But if the world will remain the way it is, then all these women will have to change their sex in order to govern the world. Any woman that you look at, like Merkel and all these aren't women. They just have the form of women, but it's not a female approach to things. The approach has to be one of a mother toward a family, like the boss at home. You understand? It's something else. It's like in Yiddish, we say balabuste, meaning that she has to be, like this. That this is how she has to take care of things. Please. And this doesn't exist? Of course it doesn't. She's also among hundreds of men, that each of them is like this, and all of them between them, and she is in between all of them. She has nothing left of the female approach. Will the corona change this? I hope. Maybe not now, but I hope, yeah. We have such viruses on the way in different forms. We have really reached an incompatibility with nature. We're not adjusted to nature anymore. You're talking about the changes in the world. The question is, what does a person internally go through? Because we talked about the external conditions. So we talked about tourism, aviation, fashion, everything will change. But what does a person go through internally? What will change in him internally? It seems to me that people will have to understand that besides, they'll see their desire changing. What the mind doesn't do, time does, meaning blows. If a person can't overcome something, can't overcome his egoistic desires intellectually, and instead of them to bring more social desires, more exalted desires, then it's done by this disease, by the coronavirus. But eventually, that's how it is. In the upcoming time, I see a period where people are starting to digest that this thing is for the long run, and not a long run that's gonna finish and we're going back to how things were, but that it's really taking us to a new life, a new way of seeing things, new perception, new relations. And from that, they will have to already build their life, industry, work, education for children.
Rav,
about what Norma asked, we are peeling off plenty of artificial systems, like there's a freedom of all the artificial stuff. And I see that people are writing that it's the best time of their lives these times. How can we further open to this process? Only by explaining to them the global process that is necessary on part of nature, that humanity on its highest level, and the still vegetative, animate, on all these levels, and the entire universe were on the highest level, and now we have to make a change, an inner change. Explain this to them, and this is what we're going through now. The times are very special, the process is very special, everything that we're going through, and gradually we see that we have a problem, because our leaders, they don't want to be replaced. You see, like Bibi and others, none of them will make room for anyone else, right? But really, all of us need to be ready for change according to nature. If we want for our changes not to happen through blows, but in hastening, let's learn what nature wants to take us to according to its plan. There are many viewers that are watching us. First steps for coming out of this situation. We still did not acknowledge that we have moved away from the state that we were in. On the inside, we did not decide yet that we don't want the same life that we had. Like Shelley says, that this is what many of her friends think. Humanity is still thinking about going back to how things were, especially politicians, the rich, the so-called successful, that corrupted our entire nature in the world and that brought about this corona upon us. And we need to understand that this period has to end with us saying that that's it. What was is over, and you have to write about this, that there is no going back, that the world was corrupted, that we cursed that garbage, prostitution, lies. We didn't live like people, but we lived in this swamp of garbage. I don't even know how to put it. And we need to finally wake up, that there is no way back. This is the point that we have to go back to, that we do not agree to going back to life like it was. They're starting that as if, let's go back to how things were, because they have no choice. They have to awaken the market a bit, because otherwise we'll have nothing to live off. And if not by awakening industry and trade and this and that, they have to do it this way, because by that we between us are going into some kind of connection, give and take and give. This is what we live from. We don't have any other way to connect with one another. What I make, what you make, she, he, this, that, only by this. So in advance, we already have to say no to those systems that we used to have. But why do we have this tendency to go back? You have nothing else. You have nothing besides that. What do you understand? Your ego is pulling you there, even though that it's bad. And everyone understands that it's bad. Everyone knows that it was a moment before a serious explosion, world war, or one or another kind of crisis where nothing will be left of industry and trade and everything. Everyone already talked about a big crisis, but you have no choice. We know nothing. Therefore, Mr. Dudi has to write about this. That there is no way back, but what's ahead? Let's see, where is nature taking us? No one's smart, no Bibi, no guns, no one knows, but how? Are we supposed to advance according to nature? This will be correct. Let's examine, because for sure we will go in this direction willingly or through blows. As it's called in Hebrew, achishena or beito. Okay, And after we will reach a state where we have to rebuild these things correctly anew, like Bala Sulam. Find a few excerpts about this from Bala Sulam, but that will show you the way. Then we'll know how to build this, how to be. Once we'll have no choice, we'll go back to the previous states, but we'll think about the corrected states. We will already be able to advance in a good and nice way. Okay, we'll also prepare materials for how to connect, and I wrote you. Yeah, we have to learn this, and then we'll find the language and so on. Okay, so this is what we're going to discuss, among other subjects. Rav, in a week, the State of Israel will celebrate its Day of Independence. We'll have an extended talk about this, but I would ask Nadia from the Israeli newspaper, Women That Write for Women, will ask because they want to make a clip. Yeah, like Dudi said, we are making a clip that is approaching women, and we'd like to ask. A modern woman felt that she has exhausted herself, that she has realized herself at her place of work, through her place of work, her career, profession. But today, many people were fired, and mainly they're at home, women. It's something that, left them with an empty void. They need to realize themselves. What can we offer for women? I don't think that a woman has what to do outside of her home. And also men, by the way. Men too. Were the rich not to squeeze everything out of us through different kinds of work, we would have lived a calm and more settled down life. And we could have lived just like we live now, only in a more not at the same pace where we don't know what's happening, what's going on, how to do things. Therefore, I think that the future is that a woman is engaged in, doing her work at home, education, this, that, and what she does. With the different things that are good, that are convenient for doing, I don't know even how to call it, different pleasant things. And also, a man, what does he have to run around all day long, 10 hours at work, 2 hours to and from work, and so on? I don't think that this is life. And we will think more about what are we supposed to do. We'll get deeper into the system of our connection with nature, which is God. And we will really find our big challenge in that. And not think about how to inflate a woman with her needing to run around all day long. I see no need for this. All of us, men too, don't need these things. Advance toward a state where people will be engaged in internal work. What's so bad about every day having a 3-hour lesson for the entire population of the world, and afterwards we'll have a meal together, and then we'll go to sleep? until the afternoon. Then we'll do some work. Something. We'll take care of our home, of this, of that, and then again we'll talk and do some kind of work, and then again go to sleep. Why do we need to run around all the time? I'm sure that our entire life has to take on a new form. The virus is at our aid. This is really our schedule today. But women that are career women, they don't have this routine. What career? That's over. What career are you talking about? Tell me, what kind of work will you have that you want to succeed in besides spiritual work? What? How can I draw these women to us? How can I show them that we have something to offer them that will fill that void? This is done gradually, by educating people, by gradually showing them where are we, in what system, what does nature want of us, why are we failing, what are we burning our life on, that we die without achieving anything in this life. All in all, what are we doing? Destroying the planet that we live on. That's it. To explain this gradually, bit by bit, and you'll see how much people will think like you. The main thing is that today around this, there's lots of noise, that it's so good to be successful. And successful in what? Successful in what, all in all? So what would you wish women for the Independence Day? To find their independence. How? Independence of their ego, of man's ego that's bearing him. This means to be independent, to be a free people in our nation. And still I see questions from women. They're asking, what would you tell career women that do want to go out and work? If not in this generation, then soon in the next generation for sure. It all disappears. So what career? What are you talking about? And also, what do you mean by career? In that a person is inflating his artificial ego that has grown. I don't have the strength to talk about this. Okay, first of all, we just wanted to say that there are many greetings on part of all of Bnei Baruch. We wanted to wish you Mazel Tov for the birth of your nephew, and also Cheli and Shai that expanded. So to everyone, to the family, and thank you very much for this interesting talk. We'll continue and write and pass this to the whole world. Thank you very much. Thank you. Sorry, birth of his grandchild. Rav has a new grandchild.